All right, perfect. Hi, everyone. All right, this is a very exciting episode of Chief Optimization Officers this week because joining Sam and I is, I think, one of my favorite online people at the moment who's talking about Chat GPT. We've got Jon Loomer, who's joined us on the podcast for this week. I'll let Jon introduce himself and say a little bit about himself in a sec. This interview fits perfectly in with a lot of the chat that we've been doing about generative AI recently, right, Sam?
Oh, yeah.
And, how businesses can leverage tools like Chat GPT and kind of others to optimize their businesses, get it working better, be able to do more stuff in their day. And part of that is how to be a better marketer. This is why Jon is perfect for today's episode because Jon is my go-to source online when it comes to news and technique about how to use Facebook ads. And I think we're just going to learn a lot chatting with you about your own thoughts on ChatGPT today, Jon, as well. So welcome so much. Thanks for coming to chat with us today. Do you want to just let everyone know who you are, a little bit about yourself?
Well, yeah, I've been doing this thing since late 2011 when I was laid off for a second time and just started a website, didn't know how to start a business. My experience was partially with Facebook. I worked for the NBA years ago, and we partnered with Facebook when there are 50 million people on the platform. And so I've been using it ever since. So I ended up just writing, and eventually started writing about Facebook ads. And that's where I found my niche. And really, that's been my niche for the last 11 plus years, is helping people with Facebook ads. So online education, essentially. But with a business that's been around that long, I also was probably a little rigid and stubborn in terms of change, which actually brings us to where we are today, because you can't be that way, whether it's short form video or AI. And so I'm taking it head on at this point.
I feel like you glossed over some really key bits here, Jon, because you're a cool kind of dude. Because I was looking at your Twitter and you are into brewing beer and data, and on your podcast, like it's all centered around the pub.
The pubcast, yeah, our favorite word here in the UK.
Yeah. So the pubcast with Jon Loomer. I had to listen to your episode with Rachel Woods because Vicky said, "Yeah, well, we're going to talk with Jon all about AI." But can you tell us a little bit about that? Because we've kind of done a little bit of a deep dive on data and how to use it in your business. But if you've been in the NBA and doing all those American sporty type things, certainly from my view, sat over here in England, understanding America through Netflix, I understand that sport's all about data. So data, beer, AI. I don't know how this conversation could go wrong, quite frankly.
It is kind of amazing that I am doing what I'm doing. Like, I wasn't trained to be a marketer or a business owner. I think that's probably true of a lot of people who do what we do. But I was a philosophy major in college, but I've always been a sports nerd, and really sports stats nerd. So baseball, starting there. And I had a job that I hated at first, which I think is something that everybody needs to experience. And I'm actually very grateful that I hated that job, because I spent a lot of time not doing my job. And I was focused on fantasy sports. This is 1999. I was, I started working for a website to update fantasy sports news and stuff. And, lots of stuff happened. I was in insurance for 5 years, got a job at the NBA late 2005 because of that experience with fantasy sports. And so I oversaw fantasy games for the NBA for 3 seasons.
Oh, wow.
And there are all kinds of stories that go along with that. But it was amazing. But it was great. Just great experience all around.
For the British audience then, and maybe for myself, but we'll say for the audience, NBA, what does NBA stand for? And just remind us which sport that is.
National Basketball Association. So
the cool sport then.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. I'm a bit of a a big sports fan regardless, but I'm mainly a baseball guy. I've actually coached baseball the last 16 years for my three sons, but basketball, definitely love it as well. So, I mean, that was just kind of a dream come true, going from something you don't like doing and you have no passion doing to like, I can't believe I'm doing this. So we had to move across country and live in New Jersey and work out of Manhattan occasionally as well to do it. But it was pretty amazing.
So, Jon, you found fame and success growing your blog online in the early 2010s. What was the kind of most amount of traffic that you've ever had to the blog?
I think the most for a month was approaching 600,000 page views. It was pretty crazy. Again, I didn't know what I was doing. So, and I think it was also a bit of luck in that I had all the time in the world. So all I did was write. There wasn't a whole lot else. I wrote basically a blog post per day on average for 2 years. And that ends up working out really well, especially, for Google if you start focusing on a single topic, and especially back in those days with Google, occasionally you'll find something that hits, and that happened as well. So honestly, it was that period of time of writing and writing and writing that made a business possible in the first place. Because then it was a matter of, oh, okay, I've got all this traffic. Now I got to start an email list, or I've got this email list. I guess I can try to sell something. I'm just grateful for the way it all worked out because it really was not planned.
Were you writing about lots of topics then, Jon, or were you
At
writing
first,
about Facebook ads in the beginning?
Well, the very beginning, I thought I was writing to find a job. And basically, so it was jonloomer.com, thinking this was like almost like a virtual resume. Here are my experiences. Here's what I could do for you. Okay, I don't have a job yet. Here are my thoughts about whatever. And it was usually something social media related that was going on. And actually, what's kind of funny is some of the early posts that got a ton of traffic were really about personal use of Facebook. So privacy stuff and a lot of not so much scams, but hoaxes and things. The copy this post and do all these stuff. Those hoaxes that were going around, I would write about that stuff and get a lot of traffic. But eventually, I started focusing on Facebook marketing. Probably, I think it was like so when Timeline for Pages came out. I believe this was February of 2012. That's when I at least started focusing almost entirely on Facebook marketing, and it was advertising probably later that year.
So right time, right place. We were talking
Absolutely.
about this on the podcast recently. Yeah, which is that kind of golden couple of years when Facebook pages could turn a business from 0 to millions, like overnight. Like the organic reach was insane, right? Cut to 10 years later, like what has that business become? Are you helping people direct with Facebook ads now if you continue to do content marketing? Like how has kind of jonloomer.com grown in that time?
It's been a bit unique in that it exploded, honestly, like those 2013 to 16, but it exploded at a time where I also wanted to keep my life manageable because I had 3 very young and growing kids. So what I didn't want to do is be traveling the world, speaking and doing all that stuff. So again, not having any experience starting a business, like my primary goal was to keep this thing going for as long as I could. So really, I found kind of my niche and my preferred software and everything else and just kind of rolled with it. But like I was just trying to work less and less during those times because as these kids were getting older, there was a lot more time I was trying to dedicate to them and honestly coaching baseball and stuff. So, we moved from only courses to membership. And that was the primary way I was doing business for most of the last 11 years. And now it's trying to understand, well, Facebook ads, is that the only thing I should be talking about? Or do we need to venture in other topics too?
I know we want to dive into the latest tech and the optimization that's going on right now. But before we do, can we just draw a line? I think there's a link there. You had this role, you said, looking at data for the MBA. And then you were using that skill set, I think, in your business to analyze what was working and then doubling down on that, what was working. I think it'd be really good if you could speak to that a little bit and how you use those skills because presumably you didn't just sit there and go, oh, this is working. Well, I'll just leave it alone. Like, presumably you were able to measure what was working. Maybe it sounded like you weren't just measuring that, you were also measuring your effectiveness so that you could have time with your family, like the most important thing, the reason we work. Could you maybe just elaborate a bit more on those topics?
So, yeah, I don't think it's a mistake, honestly, that I ended up being focused on. And really, I'm kind of an accidental marketer, but the things that I care about are a lot of the metrics, right? And that's been a benefit. And that really goes back to, not only my days working in fantasy sports and with the NBA, but like as a kid, looking at the back of baseball cards and caring about the stats and comparing players and whatnot, like, who was the better player of all time based on their stats. So while I'm not like, I wouldn't consider myself a natural marketer, and then I'm not like I don't like sales part of marketing, the analytical side of it, the metrics, I was probably too obsessed with them early on. Like the stories I could tell you about how closely I monitored things like traffic were kind of embarrassing.
But you say this, but you're the go-to person for a lot of us in the Facebook marketing world for that type of content. So it's a good thing for some people.
Yeah, but it was also, running Facebook ads, knowing what's working and what's not, and what metrics are important and what you should ignore, what can be deceiving because of those metrics. It's the same thing with analyzing athletes and their careers. Like, this one stat, he was really good because of this one stat. Well, that's a misleading stat and it's not that valuable. Same kind of thing looking at Facebook ads and determining, whether or not you were successful.
So it seems like there's four in my systems head. There's a chapter here, 4 distinct chapters. You had this period learning this skill, which was analyzing data and looking at things when you hated your job, but you got this really good skill, and then moved into the NBA and really got practice in that skill. But then you said you had 2 years of testing, and I don't want to gloss over that. That's like 700, 800 days of testing. You figured out what works. So that's chapter 2. You've isolated the few things that make a difference. And then chapter 3, it's like, oh, wow, really, really successful. Your business and your website
Doubling
and everything else. Boom. Yeah, you made that work. And now it seems like we're entering a new chapter where it's like, oh, the game's changed a little bit. And there's these new technologies. And we've got to look at how they impact this theory that you perfected that works. Like, is this petrol in the fire? Is it starting from scratch? And that's, I think, probably where we are now. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. Look, truthfully, I'm in kind of a scary place. So things exploded early on, but again, I think the fact that I didn't have some of the skills of starting a business and running a business, I may have paid for long term. So when things went really well, but I didn't really see some of the warning signs of, okay, I might need to make some changes. At the same time, though, it's like my priority was keep this thing going long enough to get my kids into college, coach their teams and all that stuff, and spend as much time with them as I could. And it was successful at that. The timing, though, was kind of funny in that kind of hit ahead at the end of the last summer. So that is at the point where my middle son was into college. So my 2 oldest were now in college. My youngest son, that was the final year I'd be coaching him playing baseball. He was moving on into high school. So now that meant I had all the time in the world once again.
What's that like?
Yeah, tell us, Jon. It sounds fantastic.
It was scary but necessary, right? Because it's like I knew the business was already reaching a point where I needed to make some changes. But making changes was really hard when I had this focus on baseball, coaching baseball, because it takes a lot. They were playing at a high level. It's pretty much a year-round thing almost. And it was a lot emotionally and just a lot to think about. So in order to make necessary changes with the business, I needed to have myself entirely to be able to do those things. So like my dedication to short form video, that never could have happened without having a lot of time. and I now have time.
So that's been part of your optimization process, right? Is moving into short form video away from the kind of blog empire that you've built for yourself. That as a process is something that a lot of business owners are going through. What made you decide, I've got to get my head down and get into short form video?
Well, first of all, knowing that something had to change. Things weren't working the way they used to.
What do you mean by that? What data could you see?
Oh, I mean, website traffic. So it's funny because this is related to some of the search engine stuff that's happening right now that I've been digging into this and doing videos about it. But it's over 15 million of my total page views were driven organically by Google.
Wow.
It's a lot. But that number is a lot less these days. It's, something like 1,000, which is still nothing to be complaining about 1,000 per day coming organically from Google, but it's a fraction of what it used to be. So if you're getting a fraction of the traffic that you used to get, that's probably going to trickle down, which it does. Trickles down to the size of the email list. And with email rules changing, it's much harder to build and maintain the size and keep building it because you lose people a lot faster.
Can you speak to that a little bit? I that's a little golden nugget right there. So can you tell us these email changes? Are we talking about the links you can send in an email?
Tracking as well.
It's the tracking. It's what makes a subscription. So back in the day, somebody subscribed to something, joined my email list, and I would email them, with my latest blog post or whatever, and I would get lots of traffic and whatnot because of that. But then it became, well, first of all, you've got the other folders. So in Google and wherever else, stuff goes to spam a lot easier. So are you even going to reach your audience? And second was, okay, they've subscribed to this thing, but they haven't subscribed to the newsletter. And that was a change as well. Okay, I can email you about this thing, but that's it. And that impacts the numbers as well. So email's still super useful, but it's not quite the way it was, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Again, kind of like what we were saying with everything else that's been going on. So I've got to replace all of this somehow. And the one thing that I hadn't been doing that people on my team like Luke have been pushing me to do forever was short form video. And I think I was like a lot of other business people where it's like, I didn't want to do it just because it's like, I don't know how. like you set a standard with blogging and everything else. Like that's easy. I could kick out a blog post in an hour, but you want me to create a short form video. I don't know what to do. Like, do I do it in the app? What are all these things, these filters and everything? Am I supposed to dance? What am I doing? What do I do about the lighting, the audio, everything?
You do a mean tap dance, I have to say.
That fear and just uncertainty kept me from doing any video at all. But I realized that, again, it came to a point where it's like, I've got to do it. I just have no choice. And I had to sit down and just accept that I'm going to create some really bad videos. But that's the only way that you can create good ones, is that you will learn from it.
You're back in that 2 years of testing again. And you got to throw a lot at the wall, figure out what sticks and optimize. Because it's interesting this. If you look at one of your blog posts, once you'd nailed the formula, you're saying a bad traffic day is like 1,000 visits a day or whatever, and you were 15 million cumulative over whatever the period was. But now with that, the economics are changing. You're saying, well, an hour gets me this kind of traffic to this kind of blog post, and you could quantify that. And now you're looking at a short form video taking you to put together, and are you able to attribute that? How is that working?
Because you are smashing it, Jon. I have to say, you've gone for quality early on, I think, in your short form video career. So we'd love to know that.
I had to embrace is how short form video measurement and goals are far different than writing a blog post. Because with a blog post, okay, I can share the link to my page and I can measure how many people clicked that link, went to my website. And I can even there, get a sense of what did those people do? Did those people register for something? Did they buy something? What did they do? And so there's always those types of metrics I'm thinking about. But with short form video, and this is something that I kind of figured out early on, people don't want to hear your sales pitch. So it's really and my blogs themselves have always been this way too. So in a way, it wasn't a difficult transition. Like I'm not selling stuff in my blogs either, but there's that measurement with the blog that was good. With the video, it's like, all I know is that you watched the video, did you comment, et cetera. There's never a CTA, and this is intentional. So I don't know, like, as far as I know, I'm not driving any traffic. And my only goal was building this emotional connection with people and showing up. And luckily, there's also this validation that I started getting. So first, it was a matter of, okay, so I started on TikTok. And once I started feeling more comfortable with what I was doing, I started pushing the same videos that I would edit separately to Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, everywhere. And I started hearing from people saying, oh, it's great seeing these videos, Jon. I haven't seen you in years.
Oh, wow.
That was a little frustrating in a way, because it's like I hadn't gone anywhere, but by being stubborn and sticking to the old formula of share links, they weren't seeing my stuff. And now they were seeing my stuff. So that was number one. But the other thing, again, like the metrics, like, the number of views and, number of followers on TikTok and stuff like that, it's nothing amazing. So I needed that kind of validation. Then I started getting people who would book a one-on-one with me, join Power Hitters Club. What's so crazy is like many of these people were, again, these people who were on my list, who have been on my list for years, but maybe I just stopped showing up for them. And they would tell me, I am here because of those videos, not because the videos said, hey, sign up for this thing, whatever. It's just because I was there and it was a daily reminder. And it was a daily reminder. I'm doing it on a daily basis. I'm publishing a new video every day.
But like with the old blogs then, Jon, right?
Yeah. Without that, it would be really hard to stay motivated without hearing that, because the metrics can't tell me any of this stuff. The metrics can't tell me that, oh, because this person watched 15 of my videos, they end up signing up and buying something from me. And that's the really hard part.
Yeah. And it's hard to optimize that and know what to do unless you get direct feedback from people. And we talk about this so much in this podcast, is just getting feedback, actually talking to human beings, and like rising above the data is everything. And, is the case like in the world of Facebook ads. I think we as kind of ads managers and kind of my little world here, it's really easy just to look at the data and go, this works, great. But knowing, well, is someone actually bought that product? Have they come back? Did they get a refund? Like knowing like the life cycle of that purchase really kind of tells you the true success of that campaign.
Is that qualitative feedback that, it's messy data. It's difficult to segment out and be, it's not quantitative. It's that Steve Blank who talks about when you get product market fit, it's when someone's pupils dilate. It's like, well, you can't measure that, can you? That's a human interaction that's, you don't get from an SEO blog post.
I love that. So what's quite interesting in your content recently, Jon, is you've kind of gone 2 feet first into talking about generative AI, which is what we've started doing here on this podcast. I mean, we were talking about general optimization, and then we just couldn't help ourselves. And we dedicate a really big chunk of every episode talking about AI now and how it can improve and optimize businesses, because the time saved, the money saved, like the opportunity to do more than 10 things at once is just so exciting right now. And hearing your take on how, generative AI can kind of help people working with marketing and ads has been really interesting. But we were just talking about this before we went live. There's just so much to learn. And I think talking through these ideas is kind of what's important right now. But what kind of hooked you when you kind of saw Chat GPT pop up for the first time?
I think it just was asking it questions and getting some answers that normally would take a lot of frustration and effort to get to in a typical, Google search. And even when it wasn't perfect, just seeing the potential of this is just the very beginning and it's only going to get better. And, one litmus test for me is like, once our friends who are not marketers in business start talking about something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The laggards, we call them. Yeah, the laggards.
So I knew I couldn't ignore it. I knew it was big. It was important. And truthfully, I think most of us agree that this is going to completely change the way we do business and probably the way we live. Maybe not immediately, but very soon.
It's nuts, isn't it? Because it's text-based, you see a lot in the content world and copywriters going, yeah, well, AI, it's not as good as a copywriter. But it's like, well, hang on a minute. It's as good as any intern. And it's not as good as any intern in just one niche. It's as good as any intern in law, physics, engineering, copywriting. Like, it's an intern that can do anything across any domain. And that surely is more useful than just one real specific skill. I'm curious. You were saying that about Google and about how you were getting frustrated with search, and this kind of met some of that frustration. How do you think of that with regards to SEO? Because you were saying you've got all these blog posts out there that are getting you all this traffic, and you can see it starting to die off. I mean, do you have a game plan there? How are you working with that?
This is a topic I've really started thinking a lot more about lately. For somebody like me, it's scary. So, I've written more than 1,000 blog posts. And again, like I've said, my business exists because of that traffic in so many ways. But the future of search appears to be, you ask a question, you get the answer. And while there might be some links floating around with that result, a lot of times you're not going to need that result. I mean, Google's been going that direction for a while anyway, and which may be contributing to some of the drop in referrals that I've had. But whether this means we're going straight to 0-click searches or search referrals are going to drop, I've got to imagine search referrals are going to drop regardless.
Yeah, especially with Bing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that's just happened this week. So to put it in context, Chat GPT have had a $10 billion investment
Lots
from
of
Microsoft.
money.
quite a lot of cash, and they've just
couple
showcased. Yeah, they've just showcased that integrated with Bing in the last week. Have either of you seen that or had a play with that? Or
I've signed up for the wait list.
I'm there on the wait list. I've seen they've integrated it with Teams as well, though. And they've got it summarizing meeting notes. So no longer do you need to have someone summarizing all these meetings that have happened. And then suddenly all that information is searchable. So it's getting kind of crazy.
I have a third-party Google Chrome plugin that's just pulling Chat GPT into Chrome at the moment. And I must say, like, I am someone who is definitely frustrated with the state of search. For the past couple of years in the SEO world, when I've put my head in there with my SEO mates, like, we've seen the trend move towards searches with developers and tech people just putting Reddit at the end of searches, just so that they go straight to the right relevant content that's, that you don't have to go through SEO sponsored articles first, and featured snippets, and kind of rich kind of content, like Google's been doing that for years. So I guess the signs were all there that as users, we were going to be trained, if you like, and okay with the kind of no-click searches. I imagine what might happen is it's going to swap. So you'll get a AI-generated response, and then perhaps on the right-hand side of a search page, you'll have a list of websites to go to potentially, or the chat will recommend those websites.
It's really interesting because the way we envision is like, they've got to have a list of links somewhere, right? That's kind of because like we feel like that's the way it's always got to be. That's the way it's always been. And also, Google makes money off of that. So how do they monetize a search result that doesn't get any clicks on links? So there's so many questions with all of that. And also, so if we move to a point where we're getting far fewer clicks from search results, you've got to think that it's going to impact our strategies. Like, are we going to keep creating as much content as we do on our websites? Because it's increasingly difficult to drive people there organically.
Yeah. especially if it's going to get scraped or, by an AI tool, right? So
it just feels like this endless cycle, though, because if that's the case, we're creating less content on our websites. Well, that's the stuff that also feeds the AI to get good answers. So where are they going to get their answers?
unless websites move to becoming like AI optimized and not search engine optimized, and then that whole that whole industry might just disappear overnight. I mean, we've seen it before in the tech world. It's possible.
Yeah, look, I think we have to be careful about and understanding this whole technology is scary to a lot of people. It's scary to copywriters. It's scary to artists. It's scary to SEO people. It's scary to marketers. And so a lot of the opinions out there are going to be about how flawed this is, that it's not good enough.
It's taking the jobs. Yeah.
But I think the reality is this. I mean, just like the internet. I mean, if you had told businesses back in 1990 that someone could search Google and get answers to how they do, like, fix their plumbing or something, it would probably freak out plumbers, right? Like, oh no, we're not going to be needed anymore. It's not so much like the internet changed the way we consume content. The internet changed our jobs. It created jobs. But if you kept doing things the way you were doing them in 1990 and tried to do that in 2000, you're probably going to be obsolete. I think that's kind of what we're looking at here. And like, the focus has been on the jobs that it eliminates. I think it's more that, like, I don't see this, at least yet, as something that replaces copywriters and replaces it. I think it gives us rough drafts. First of all, it's really good for generating ideas. It's really good for providing quick answers. There's some automation that can happen as well that we can sync into. But I think you still need people to oversee this stuff. I think, one example I give is, like, if everybody has access to AI now and everybody has this ability to create content from AI, the local store down the street as well as the big guy, what separates them? What separates them from the competition? If it's just easy now, like, you don't need copywriters anymore. Like, no, you still need something that separates you, because otherwise everybody has the same tools.
There's a traditional sales funnel, isn't there, where you generate your awareness, you get some engagement, email sign up, you then try and get some sale and deliver some value. And in my head, there's a value chain there where you start to influence someone's thoughts and beliefs, and then you deliver some knowledge, and then you ultimately, that results in action, which changes reality. And that's how great copy works. It's, okay, your current situation is blah, and here it is, like, super duper improved. And it feels like AI is going to sit at that front end, the lower value part of that value chain, and where people, it's going to eliminate all that burden of just information and influence, and it's going to move people further down that value chain and to take people to action and to change reality. So I think it'd be really interesting. Vicky was asking the question about the shorts you're creating, and you're taking action. It has changed your reality. So how is that process working for you? You said it to begin with, like, which app would I do it in? Do I do it in an app? Do I do it on my phone? Do I need a camera, a production studio? Like, could you talk maybe, is that process down to an hour now? What tools are you using? And how have you gone from, sort of curious beginner throwing stuff at the wall to now smashing it again?
Well, I think that's the combination of volume and velocity, just creating a lot and learning from it and finding a process and what works and what doesn't. So I was really frustrated in that first month or so, because I was determined to create 2 or 3 videos a day in the early going, but it was taking me 2 hours per video. And so I was basically spending most of my day doing these videos. And I'm still focused primarily on a similar style that's a little bit more polished, right? Where I try to make sure my lighting's right and want to make sure the quality of the audio and the video is good, and I edit. But basically what I do is, like, I'll sit my phone down in front of me and just talk. I mean, I have a general idea of what I'm going to talk about, but I just talk for 3 to 5 minutes, and then I cut it up. I edit it up. I, like, throw out stuff where, like, I was just sitting there thinking, or I say something that doesn't make any sense, or I stumble on my words, which happens a lot. And I always get it down to a minute. And if I can't get it down, and honestly, I've got it down to a science where like I know when I'm recording whether, okay, this is enough or this is too much, or I need to stop, I need to wrap it up because I need to get it down to a minute. So I have a process, and then so I do it all in ScreenFlow, which like people ask me what software I use. Just there's so many different pieces of software you can use to do this. Don't feel like you have to use one piece of software. It's like whatever makes you comfortable. I've used ScreenFlow for over 10 years.
Well, I know that because it's not called ScreenFlow anymore. That's what it used to be called. It's like called something else now, isn't it?
I mean, it's still called ScreenFlow on my computer, unless
yeah, that is old school.
So I also I'll do tutorials too. So ScreenFlow is good for that, where I'll record my screen and walk through stuff. And then I use CapCut for the captioning. All of that takes about an hour. But the truth is, anybody could just turn on their phone and record. There are a lot of people who are super popular. They don't do crazy editing. They don't worry about editing like on their laptop and putting in the beautiful captioning and all that kind of stuff. They just do it all on their phone. They probably spend 15 minutes on it and they shoot it out there. I think it's also important that people understand is like, even though, I have this process now and it still takes me an hour, which is something, it doesn't have to take that long. You can get a thought out there like that's valuable. And like something occurs to you like, oh, this is a really good idea. It's something I need to get across. And remember, it's something you need to get across quickly. And as somebody who's wordy, as you could tell from answering this one question, it challenges you to simplify your message.
We relate, Jon. We relate.
That's fine. We're known for going off tangent ourselves. It's fine.
But keep a list going. Like if you can't just turn on the phone and start recording when you have an idea, keep a list going of all these topics and record them.
It's nutty because those lower quality TikToks seem to do really well. And you've got, YouTube agencies that would be on retainers for 5 figures, 5-10 grand a month, are now competing with young guy or girl with a phone who's going, I'll produce your content for you. And I'll do it for a couple $100.
That's why you got to keep testing. You got to keep putting content out there, right?
Yeah. Look, well, first of all, yes. If all you have time for is a quick 15 minutes for recording and editing, do whatever you can. What's kind of frustrating to me, like I've seen this before where someone who's in right place, right time, which I was 10 years ago, right? Right place, right time, talking about AI. And for example, and they don't do any editing. They don't do any flashy stuff or anything. They just sit down and record and push it out. And they're like, look, you can have 100,000 followers and get a ton of engagement on your videos too. You don't need to do all that flashy stuff. Like, well, it's partially because of your, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
In terms of saying like anybody could build this huge following from doing that simple stuff. I don't know. I mean, you have to find the right niche as well.
You can be a millionaire if you win the lottery, as we've said before.
Exactly.
I feel like we're going to waste an opportunity here to get Jon's insight quickly on what Facebook's doing with AI stuff at the moment as well. So I might just do like a quick fire at you, Jon, about this, because Facebook obviously changed all of the way they worked a couple of years ago due to the kind of privacy changes from Apple. And they've had to work quite hard with their own like internal AI to kind of make up for that shortfall in data that they don't have anymore. I mean, what do you think the kind of future of that is going to be for kind of Facebook? And what sort of insights have you got about the kind of data that they're collecting with their own AI?
Well, I think what we're seeing with Facebook ads really is what we're seeing everywhere for advertising. Like I dabble a little bit in TikTok ads. It looks a lot the same. I know that Google Ads is moving in this direction too. It's basically, the days of us micro-targeting and micro-managing our campaigns. Honestly, the fun, to me, that's kind of the fun of advertising, is less important. So because of the machine learning and the AI, Facebook basically is like, hey, let us handle the targeting. just go super broad. And if you're optimizing for conversion, you kind of don't even have a choice anymore. Like you can give them some custom audiences, but they can still go beyond those if they want to. So it goes super broad, and machine learning is going to learn what's working and what's not. And really what becomes most important at that point is your copy, your creative, your offer, your product, as opposed to back in the days, like all these little levers that we were pulling.
Hacks and things. Yeah, yeah. So it's good old-fashioned content and creative again, right? Do you think that Facebook might replace that though, and use generative AI to like make copy suggestions and image suggestions maybe?
I think very likely. I mean, as it is. So like if you were to ask Chat GPT, what are the most powerful ways to use Chat GPT as a Facebook advertiser, you're going to get a list of things that are like, how is that possible? And it's because it requires access to the API and connecting it to your Facebook ads account and doing things related to updating the creative, updating the copy, messenger bots, within your ad, things like that. So we've seen kind of pieces of that already from Facebook, over the years, but the true power of AI from a third party point of view is already kind of there, right? Connected with ChatGPT to do some of these things. You got to think that eventually that's just going to be Facebook doing all that stuff or offering to do all that.
Oh, now I'm the one getting a little bit concerned because with my little mini agency, we probably need to pivot, right? And become AI operators potentially.
I think the concern could be, any old business could then set up their ads and do great. But then if any old business can set up their ads and do great, the competition increases, CPMs go up. How do you stand out? What are you doing differently? So, I mean, these are things that we have to keep remembering, that if the floor raises in terms of how easy something is, that doesn't necessarily mean that the specialists aren't needed. They're going to be needed in a different way to stand out above the competition.
So the optimization just displaces and goes elsewhere, essentially. Yeah, I can totally see that.
I think Facebook optimization is still seriously flawed. It's great for e-com. I still don't understand why they haven't figured out a way to optimize for quality traffic and quality engagement. Like if what I want, because, again, this is kind of my business. I want to drive traffic, quality traffic to my website that people will return over and over. They know, the characteristics of people or what makes a quality visitor, allow me to optimize for that. Instead, as anyone who's run traffic ads will know, you're going to get a lot of 3-second visits, but Facebook thinks they did the right thing. So there's stuff like that where I'm like, how close are we to that, AI control? And then, of course, I've talked about this in my community all the time, like how terrible Facebook is at detecting scams and doing something about it. So like it's stuff like that. And like, so really how close are we to, just AI run campaigns? I think we're still a ways away.
Well, it's that's good to know from my point of view as a kind of Facebook agency business owner, right? But I think you're right. I think, and Sam, you mentioned this before, right? Is that we've all got so excited since the end of November, since Chat GPT had come about, because what it's done is it is ignited the imagination of a much broader part of the population about the possibilities here. And we're only like 2.5, 3 months like later, and we're already talking about, not having to work ever again because generative AI will do the washing up for us and all of that type of thing. We're a way away from that.
Yeah, I think we're still in the early stages. It doesn't mean that this is just a fad. It doesn't mean that. I just think that the biggest changes are probably still years away. I mean, we're going to still see some great stuff during the next year as well, but like the biggest impact is probably going to still be further into the future. As we saw with Google Bard initial demo, that didn't go very well.
I was saying this online this week is I convinced my boss at an agency I worked at to buy Google Glass. And we had a Google Glass for like nearly a year, and we were like the hippest agency people we knew until we weren't, if you know what I mean. Not anymore.
I think it's kind of to summarize what's been said. So we've got this exponential decrease in the understanding of technology and this exponential increase in the reliance on technology. So with that, we're probably getting fewer and fewer people that can make progress, make meaningful progress using the tech. And it seems like that's where the opportunity is. So we've seen this sudden massive adoption, but that doesn't correlate with the number of people that can make this stuff dance and make it stuff work. So we're probably going to see a slowdown in the evolution, but an increase in adoption. All of us have said, wow, this is amazing. It could do all this stuff. But I don't think we've actually spoken about how we use it in our workflow. And because I'm not sure that we do have it in a structured workflow. So maybe it's difficult to say how we use it now because it's still new and we're still figuring it out. If you were to project forward maybe 5-10 years, because things can change and maybe some things that aren't working currently won't exist. What do you think your business, your the club and your membership, do you have an idea of what that might look like, or what you're worried about that it might look like?
Honestly, that kind of unknown is the stuff that freaks me out because it is overwhelming, right? And I think this is where most of us are, is that we know this is powerful. We know this is likely going to change how we do business, how we live, work, and play. But how? Like, what specifically do we need to do in preparation? But the problem is so much of this is in such early stages that I don't think Google knows what Bard's going to look like in 2 years from now. And Chat GPT is still very early stage GPT. I mean, it's not even connected to the internet post 2021. I've tried to pin people down too. Like, okay, well, what exactly? What do we got to do? What is this going to look like? I think a lot of it is automating the things that you don't like. You wish you didn't need to do. Yep. Some of the mundane stuff that'll be part of it. Like, and stuff I can visualize working. It's like, for example. This assumes that our websites are still going to be good to go, a few years from now. But training the AI on the content of our websites or on our product, and then having a chat button that normally goes to Messenger and has to talk to a human. Now you can ask questions about Facebook ads, about my product, whatever, and get a conversational response.
They exist,
that may sound like it replaces somebody, but instead, to me, that just means that person can be dedicated to do something else that's more important.
It sounds to me like I really liked those early chapters that we spoke about where you were like doing something I hated, learned a skill, then went and practiced for 2 years. It sounds like for you, the timing is perfect because you're like, oh, I've got this time now. And you're back in that practice phase of like, well, let's just do 2 years of grinding it out and measuring what works.
You've got Chat GPT to help you now. Surely you're getting scripts written by Chat GPT, Jon, and you're getting a bit of help with your marketing that way.
The example that I use for recently how this has helped me, because what's difficult with Facebook ads in particular is, again, the information it has is often outdated when I ask ChatGPT what to do with this. But I was like, okay, I want to do a training on short form video. And I basically gave it, okay, these are like 13 topics I'm planning to cover. Give me 20 more. And it does. And then I'm like, okay, I like those 5 or whatever. And then I think what people don't understand about this technology a lot of times, the misunderstanding is like, I put in this question, it gave me this bad answer. It doesn't work. No, this is a conversation. Like, you ask somebody a question, if you don't give them enough context and they give you an answer that you don't like, it doesn't mean that they don't know what they're talking about. It just 100%. Means you need to give them more context. So like with this example, it's like, okay, I like some of these examples. Expand on these 5 things or provide some more that are closely related to these things. And it's basically having a conversation with AI that to me has been the most powerful part of this is the brainstorming, the generating ideas, Like, I'm not a copy person, certainly a video script person. So to be able to say, hey, generate a video script with these things in mind is pretty amazing. And it's a starting point. And then you say, and I don't know if you saw it, I did this really corny video that was basically like, it ended up kind of looking like an ad for Chat GPT. But I set it up. I was like, hey, I got these two marketers, one who's a skeptic of Chat GPT, one who's a believer, generate a 60-second video script. And it was a back and forth of trying to get a script that I was comfortable with. I tried to make it funny. I was like, imagine that you're a writer for Old School or Seinfeld or something. It's not funny at all. I started using other approaches, like, okay, you're putting together a blockbuster thriller, and all of a sudden it's like, that's actually a pretty good script. So it's just a matter of like working with it, understanding its strengths and weaknesses, but you have to do part of the heavy lifting too, which is providing the context and helping it understand what you're looking for.
Totally. I feel like context and prompts is going to be something that's going to really enter the tech lexicon in the next couple of years. Like, you won't start with search. It's going to be my prompt was, or something like that, I imagine.
It sounds like a lot of the experience people have had the first time they hire a virtual assistant. So you get this person who's, got a level of skill, but if you give them rubbish instructions, you're going to get rubbish results. And whereas you give them very specific, listen, click this, do that, get some information from there, this is what good looks like, then you get good results. And it, like dealing with an intern, like, someone goes and does a degree. When they start that degree, when they go to college, when they go to university, they're just a bag of bits that can do some stuff. But when they come out, they've developed this specialized skill. And it sounds like the opportunity is like, develop that framework that, rather than plugging it into a person, plug it into this AI tool, and you'll be able to get this superior result. So it sounds like we're all becoming, educators of AI almost.
And I think that's part of the adjustment here is like, we're used to a Google search of a quick one-liner. How do you do X, right? And then you have to sift through all these links, but you can't have a conversation with Google, or you couldn't, and like provide 2 paragraphs of background of what you're trying to do. Now tell me how with this understood, how do I do this? You can't do that with Google, or couldn't do that with Google, but you can do that with Chat GPT. And that's been an adjustment. I think that's why so many people, use it a couple times like, it doesn't work. It's because we're trying to use it like a typical Google search.
We are 20 years of training. Yeah. Like we've been indoctrinated into the Google ways, haven't we? Well, okay. Well, we're getting to the end of our conversation now, Jon. It's just been so much fun to kind of riff these ideas with you, and definitely have taken away some like really interesting nuggets about your kind of own optimization from the blog world into short form video world. Can you let everyone know who's listening, how can they find you online? And in particular, how can they find these short form videos that you've been talking about as well?
Well, you can find me at Jon Loomer on TikTok, on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, all the same videos go to those places. Facebook is Jon Loomer Digital. My podcast is the Pubcast with Jon Loomer, which a lot of those videos are also repurposed into short podcast episodes. So if you don't like watching videos, you can actually listen to them.
Oh, we should do that, Sam. We're so bad at that. We're going to be doing that soon.
We're going to have to ask you how you do that, Jon. Jon, just for the audience, Jon Loomer. So Jon is spelled Jon and Loomer is Loomer. So that's Jon, Jon, Loomer, Loomer.
Yep. And I'm still writing 2 blog posts a week. So jonloomer.com. That's really my home base. So you can learn more about, a private community, booking one-on-ones, all that kind of stuff too.
Excellent.
Jon, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Brilliant.
If you enjoyed this video and or if you listened, please go over to YouTube and check us out. So we are Chief Optimization Officers at YouTube, and like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you think and all that good stuff. Thank you very much for listening.